So good afternoon, I'm Miss Anchors, and as you can see, I'm live in my classroom for another Zoom into Career. Today we have a close family friend of mine, Bryce Ockerman, who is a aerospace engineer at Boeing. So welcome, Bryce.
Thanks, Katie.
So why don't you fill us in, because you know your job better than I do. So tell us about your job and sort of your pathway of how you got there.
Yeah, okay. So currently I work in the Boeing El Segundo facility down here in Southern California in the LA area. And I kind of have two different aspects of my position. I'm a systems engineer currently. And so if you think about how you might break a product down, like a car or an airplane, you can break it into subsystems and break those into smaller pieces as well. And so I work with Boeing commercial airplanes to help design and break down products into subsystems. And I also am a program manager for a astrodynamics software product for satellite systems here at Boeing.
Okay, is that where you have because your dad told me that you have like high clearance. Is that what you have your clearance on? Is your satellite
I don't actually have it yet, but that's what's driving that is we have a number of classified and government related programs for satellite.
So speaking of that, did you go back and so I know you have your MBA. Did you have to go back, because we teach a project management class here at school, did you go back and get your project management certifications, or are you working towards that as well with being the project manager on that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's a small software team. It's not necessarily required to do those certs. Boeing has internal like program management best practices, workshops and trainings and stuff. So a lot of other companies have that as well. But in terms of formal requirements, it's not required for the job necessarily. However, a lot of people, along their careers, if they do PM stuff for, 5 to 15 to 20 years, most of that time there'll be a stretch of like 2 years where they actually go and make sure to go get some PM credential.
Are you thinking about getting yours, or are you just?
Not at this time.
Okay.
It's still fairly
fine.
fresh of, having gone back, and to give some context, after being in the industry here for 5 years, I decided to go back to school after work as a part of an after work program, and went to do Masters of Business Administration. Yeah. And so that has kind of been one of my pathways, and one of the things that we can talk about a little bit as we go back a couple of layers, where I want to take my career and how I've thought about things. Because when I was in high school, business was really being a business leader is what I really wanted to do. And I had actually ended up going to aerospace engineering was my undergraduate degree that I chose. But business was always something that I was really interested in. So I've kind of parlayed that into how I've built my career and how I plan to keep angling towards leading engineers and leading projects that require highly technical skill sets like that.
Okay, sweet. So where do you have your degrees from? So let's give a shout out to those schools.
Yeah, so I went to, so I grew up in Olympia area, obviously near you guys. And
you can say where you went to high school, it's okay.
Yeah.
There's no shame.
North Thurston High School.
Okay.
Graduated in 2008. And immediately went over to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University that August, and that's in Prescott, Arizona. And it's a fairly specialized school. It was pretty much the same size as North Thurston was in terms of students. There was, like 1,800 or something like that. And so it had really specialized programs and allowed me to get directly into the wind tunnel labs and directly hands-on with a lot of the projects that you might not get from a larger university. Although I obviously didn't rule those out. There was a lot of really cool options that I could have done. That's where I ended up choosing, and it's worked out fairly well.
Yeah, and then let's not forget that MBA, because that's a big achievement. So you just finished that. Was it last summer or I know.
It was in December last year.
December.
So it's been about a year, almost a year and a half now. Geez. But yeah, so did about 3.5 years of part-time MBA program, and got that degree from University of Southern California and the Marshall School of Business. So that was awesome. Fight on. Everybody should consider going there. It's a great school and really awesome alumni network. Really awesome.
Do you feel like between that, because I know Embry-Riddle was so small. Do you feel like when you chose Embry-Riddle that you missed out on like that college experience? Because I felt like when I saw your pictures and stuff, like you got that college experience when you went to USC. Do you feel like, were you happy that you got both of those experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And when it came down to choosing to go to, or choosing what graduate degree program to do, there's obviously online options. But I did want the larger college experience, and I was really happy to have gotten that through USC. And obviously, I've also met my future wife through that program as well. So
bonus for you there, buddy.
Happy about that.
So did Boeing did they help you with going back to school? Like, did they adjust your schedules and work with you on that so you could advance your career there?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of schedule adjustments as well. I didn't adjust mine per se. I just did my 9 to 5 normal engineering hours pretty much, or 7 to 3:30 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then went to classes after that. There's also weekend programs, but when it comes to support that Boeing is able to provide, and this is across all sites, so everybody up in the Puget Sound as well, can leverage the Learning Together program is what it's called. Okay. And they'll pay, depending on the degree program, for engineering, if I went and did an engineering master's, they just pay for it, bar none. For an MBA, they were willing to pay $25,000 a year towards that education. So it took a big chunk of that tuition cost, and signing up for an additional couple of years at the company is not a big deal for me because I've already been here for a while.
Yeah. So speaking of that, let's go into question number 2. So in your job that you have right now and you have all your schooling, what is an important skill or training that you need to enter? So like if you were going to tell somebody, if you want a job in aerospace engineer or working at Boeing, because you're definitely not building, you're doing the planning pieces of it from what I'm getting. The design. Thank you. I missed the word. What do you think important skills and training do you need to enter that field?
Yeah, so I think I want to touch on a couple of things here. Okay. First and foremost is I interned with Boeing. So I went and started, my college education. And during that time, during the summers, my goal was to get a couple of internships at Boeing. So I became a college intern twice before I ended up graduating. And that helped get my foot in the door, and that'll help for any aerospace company, or, for the most part, any Fortune 100 or whatever company that you would like to join, whether it's aerospace or finance or, whatever sector you'd like, energy, anything like that, internships really help. So that's the first thing. Second thing is certain companies actually allow or actually set up high school internship programs. So here in El Segundo, actually last year, I partnered up with an intern, a high school intern from a local high school down here in Southern California, and our whole site had about 100 high school interns. And so really a super useful thing for any high schooler to do is to try to find an opportunity to work for a potential company that they might want to work for in the future, right? And that kind of goes with the whole extracurricular idea. When I was in high school, I played sports and worked at the Briggs YMCA in Olympia, and all of those things really help because it's all about being a well-rounded individual, right? We're kind of in a marathon here.
Yeah.
When you go to college, everything kind of gets reset and everybody's kind of in the same level playing field. And same thing happens when you graduate college. You look for opportunities in the workforce, and where, I guess, to kind of bring this full circle to your actual question, what is required for my position or my career is the degree, basically degree and desire to work in a specific field.
So do you feel like your degree set you up for your job that you're doing right now?
Absolutely.
100%?
Well, I mean, continuing education is by far the most important part of it.
Okay.
When it's all said and done, if you say from middle school to high school, you had all this, history classes and math classes and numbers, all these different classes, and you will leverage a lot of those things. And from high school to college, you'll leverage some of them. And, if you go into the engineering field, maybe, there's a lot of things that may not apply anymore, but you build off of all of those.
Do you wish there was one class in high school that you would have taken that you didn't take that you think would have helped you?
Physics. The physics AP class.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Physics
is really challenging in college. That, and like certain engineering classes like dynamics, the motion of objects through space, really tough concepts that include calculus and stuff. I still struggle with all of that.
So you're telling me you've got a smart guy that does all the math for you on your team?
That makes a good leader, right? A good leader is people who are capable of pulling teams together that have a diverse set of skills.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a couple of folks on my team that are astrodynamicists, and they are, from a skill set across the world, they're high up in the list of people capable of doing high level astro engineering tasks.
Okay. I didn't even, I learned a new word today. So thank you for that. Don't ask me to repeat it, but thank you for that. Okay. So is there anything else that you would like to add in on career, skills, your path there before we move on?
Yeah. Let's just really hit that one home, is the continued education. I got a technical degree, and then I went and got a business degree. And in between, I've taken classes and I read, and I usually try to understand what's going around in the world. So what's really important and what makes somebody good at their job isn't necessarily just their technical skill sets, but also their understanding of what's going on, in the world and what's going on in the company that you're working at. If I'm working on satellite stuff, I still pay attention to what's going on in the commercial airplane business. Not only because I used to work in that part of the business, but it just so happened that, what seems to keep coming up is the more involved you get in certain things like new business proposals, where we're trying to actually get contracts from the government or from other customers, all of a sudden you start using the same resources that you used before. So that's really key, is to make sure that you constantly are, building on your skill sets and trying to remember and keep a framework of, a frame of reference of all the things that you've learned, so that you can use them in the future when you have to pull them out of your pocket.
So what do you think in your skill set, what is the one thing that you feel that you've used over and over and over, like that you've pulled from your toolbox and that you've improved on it or used it over and over again?
Yeah. So what's really interesting is on any given day to day, I don't do like a specific engineering thing, right? I don't pull out my book and like write an equation down. It's really a culmination of a lot of different the ability to understand
Yeah.
what other people are talking about, and the ability to communicate. Frankly, I can communicate across from folks that are not in engineering and working on contracts, or from a leadership team, or to directly with the team that I'm managing, in a way that being able to abstract the right information and portray the right information to the right audience is really really important. And I think that may go across all professions, to be
Oh,
honest.
I definitely, being a teacher, you've got to be able to talk to your students and engage them in a way, but then still be able to engage professionally with the people that you work with, and parents. So I thought, I was happy that you said communication, because I think it's a huge thing that we focus on, but yet we don't focus on. And it's a skill that you can always grow.
Yeah, and that plus another thing is organization. It's really funny. Everywhere I go, there's some disarray in the information that's there. If I take a new role, I come in, and a lot of times people will have done a job for such a long period of time that they just have it up there. And that just doesn't work when you pass it off to somebody else, right? It's just the connections aren't there, not that they're incapable of understanding. It's a function of, you really have to write things down and organize information in a way that is easily digestible for everybody, and in a way that everybody can also contribute to it.
Okay. So with your job right now, I know that you're in LA and everybody's experiencing COVID. So how has and we talked about it earlier, but not in depth, has your job changed at all? Are you on your commercial side with airplanes? Has your job stopped? Like, what is your job looking like right now?
Yeah, well, up till the last couple of years, I've been, traveling probably at least once a quarter per year. And that's obviously opened up to where, instead of traveling, we're trying alternate methods to communicate, which I think is good, because it costs a lot of money to travel, even if it's only $1,000 trip for me to go up to Seattle. It may not be necessary if we get the same information across. So that's really is having an effect, and possibly a positive one on our company and the bottom line. But in terms of like my job, actually, my specific position really hasn't changed much at all. In fact, leading a software engineering team, I got, my lead developer is in Michigan.
Okay.
I've actually never met him in person.
Interesting.
We have a couple of guys in Huntsville, Alabama, and another person in Colorado. And so, and then a couple in El Segundo with me. And so when it's all said and done, I actually, I don't commute 2 hours anymore a day.
Nice.
Which is kind of nice. And the job hasn't changed much, but the business environment has changed quite a bit.
So when you communicate, do you guys use Zoom? Do you use Microsoft Teams? What is your tool that Boeing uses to bring all those people together? And does time play a factor? So like, what are your hours? Because those are almost 3 different time zones. So how does that work?
Yeah. So, I'm not going to be one to be too concerned about my hours. I think I've been very privileged having gotten into the engineering profession. I can kind of set my own hours, and generally it's the 9 to 5. But certain times, like the last couple of weeks, we were working on trying to win some new business for my team, and so my hours crept up, and I was working in the evenings and stuff. But in general, even if we have a development team, and I've had this in the past where we've had software teams in India, we just adjust and try to find ways to meet. we've done it where like we get on at 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. and have a call with people across the world in order to share information and get as much as we can across, or much information we can across. But yeah, I think as long as you're flexible and without having children and stuff at this point in my life, it's not too challenging to be flexible.
So do you guys use Zoom, or I'm going to stand up and turn my lights on, but do you guys use Zoom or do you use Microsoft Teams?
Well, so we use WebEx, Citrix WebEx.
Okay.
Which Citrix, I think, owns one or two of those other ones anyways, but that company has a lot more, or at least historically has a lot more data security.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
So that's what we use. And of course, we've been trying, we've really been taxing the company's resources when it comes to that. So I think they're starting to relax, and other companies are stepping their game up per se to making it available and secure to actually use other platforms.
Okay. So I'm going to go to question 3. What do you recommend students do now to prepare for employment? Like, it just from your life history or your friends, like, what do you think, like, when you sit around, like, what's one thing that always comes up to be like, I wish I would have done this in high school, or I wish I would have done this in college to better prepare myself right now for employment?
Yeah, well, I think again, it's a long process and it never ends. And so, as an example, when I was in high school making decisions on what I wanted to do next, my capstone project had a major effect on me. What I did was work with a land speed record racing company in Spanaway, and so I got to interface with those guys and learn a lot about that, how airplanes work, or at least just the tip of the iceberg on how they work. And obviously I worked for a living, or worked in high school and knew that I wanted to go to college, and so just remembering that, like, your decision making process is, you want to try your best to think ahead and use your best judgment. And I had the opportunity to play baseball beyond high school, and I chose not to because I was ready to make that step elsewhere. And so instead of going to like a junior college and playing baseball, I decided to leave the state and go to a school specific to what I was looking for. But I have other friends and colleagues now that are, doing wonderfully, if not even, being more successful than I am, that did go that path, right? They went to the path of going to going to junior college or whatever and playing sports and just making the best of whatever your situation is. And yeah, I mean, when it's all said and done, even the folks and friends and colleagues of mine that decided not to pursue higher education, they're doing well. I mean, when it's all said and done, I think if I really thought about it, I could probably be just as successful with just the way that I behave and operate in my life. Could have been just as successful without going to college, and that would have been by starting in my own business or something. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, especially afforded to younger individuals now who have platforms that didn't even exist 10 years ago. And I'm continually impressed with what people can do by, like the esports industry is just crazy. And, I don't play any of those games myself at this point anymore, but you can build a business around that. And that's a greenfield opportunity.
So if you were not in aerospace right now and you could snap your finger and be in any career field doing anything, what would you be doing?
Yeah. So there's two things to that. The first one is probably uh, finance, like investment banking. Again, I think when it's all said and done, the reason, I was really considering that when I was doing my MBA, but lifestyle decisions or lifestyle choices that I wanted, I wanted to do things a different way than that was going to require.
Okay.
So that's one, and that's one of the reasons that, again, constant learning and making decisions that is best for your choices are really important. And the second thing was I'd probably start a business that um, would use technology in home renovation. So as an example, I'd like to, like Home Advisor, the website Home Advisor.
Yeah.
I've constantly in my head been thinking that's not good enough. And I pretty much spent all my waking hours outside of working on my home and trying to learn on the internet how to actually do things. And when it's all said and done, some of the things, or most of the stuff, I do myself by watching YouTube videos, which are only sort of good.
Yeah.
And then trying to contract work out that I can't do. And that contracted work is like, it's impossible to get good quotes.
So I'm really surprised that you don't rely more on your family, because your family does a lot of that stuff. You don't ask Felicity to ever come down and help you remodel your home.
I haven't, probably because, they're busy. I mean, everybody's busy.
Everybody's
but
busy,
when it's
but
all
like,
said and done, I do call them and ask them what the heck's going on with something. And usually I get an answer that
you don't understand.
no, it's not that I don't understand it. That's never really the case. It's more of a function of, why don't you pay somebody to do that? Or, or do it this way. It's good enough. You're overthinking it. There's a lot of that.
Yeah. I would have to say, like, your family is very handy in being able to fix things. So you did get that gene and being able to do your own home construction, which, and being able to use a YouTube video to help you with it. Have you thought about creating it and doing it as a side job and reaching that goal? Or are you, it sounds like you put a lot of time and effort into it. Why not go for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think honestly, I'm learning a lot. I didn't get a computer science degree, and I didn't get or software engineering degree, and so I'm learning a lot by leading the skill set or leading people who have those skill sets. And so I wouldn't say that it's off the table at this point, but my goal isn't necessarily right now to really, frankly, to really work that hard, because that would probably require 24/7 level of commitment to get seed funding and early round funding to actually start a business and pull people over.
Okay.
And frankly, the partners I would choose. And so to start any business like that, you kind of have to have 2 or 3 people. One person who probably behaves more like me, and then other people who, believe it or not, are way more technical than I am, and probably like a software engineer. And so my friends and colleagues who I would try to start that with do not want to join at this point in time in their lives either. So
Okay.
we'll see, but
Well, maybe one day when you guys are, a little bit older, it might be something that you look into. But okay, so we're running out of time and I want to be true to our time. So we have one more question and then any other thing that you would like to add to it. What advice would you have given yourself in high school to better prepare you for your career field?
well, the easy answer would probably be, actually study. I've been able to get away with a lot. Again, I think a lot of my colleagues and friends were really smart, individuals, and I've done well myself from that. But certainly, you know, if you're going to be spending the hours to do something, you should probably really work on making sure you're going to remember it. You know, and so that's hard to say. There's probably a lot of things I can think of. I'm struggling right now.
That's okay.
But if I were to talk to,
Like,
yeah, no, here's the one piece of advice I get.
Okay.
Don't let, hold on, I gotta say it right or else I'm gonna screw it all up. If I was high school Bryce looking at college, don't let college get in the way of your education.
Okay.
There's a lot to be learned in life. and so, you know, roll with the punches and try hard and do well. Make sure you don't lose your parents' money or anything like that, or sign up for too much, sign up for classes that you can't pass. But when it's all said and done, there's a lot of learning and life experiences that come along with college. That come along with growing up and being in your 20s, which I'm exiting soon, so I don't.
Yeah, we can leave it on that. So life experience and learning from them and enjoying it. So thank you for taking your time today. I really appreciate it. And I will send you your link so you can watch our amazing video together. So thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie.